Today, I'm talking to Zach Robinson and Leo Birenberg. They're the composers from Netflix's Cobrai Kai and Florida Man. And recently, they scored Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, the 100% factually accurate biopic about Weird Al.
Al Yankovic. It's long. It's hard to pronounce. So I'm just going to throw this out there. Weird Al Yankovic. I love it.
I'll start with an easy question. What is the greatest film score of all time?
Oh, God.
I don't know. What's the best film score of all time? I guess why is it not Layla Schifrin's Rush Hour soundtrack?
That's a great question.
Someone tell me why.
It could be.
Someone tell me why it's not that. One of my favorites is A Fistful of Dollars, Ennio Morricone's score.
Nice.
That's like the one that got me into it.
I really love Out of Africa. I love Catch Me If You Can. I mean, big Lord of the Rings fan. Like, I saw Fellowship of the Ring 8 times in theaters. Not kidding. Yeah, that was probably like one of the first times I was like, oh, this is like, the music really adds a lot to this movie. How do I do that?
So is this where you're kind of the two sides of your collaboration is coming from? You have this kind of like cinematic side and the more kind of beat-driven, energetic side, or not really?
I don't know. I actually think not so much.
No.
Okay. Yeah, you'd be surprised who comes up with what bonkers ideas over here.
Right.
We do like a lot of things, both of us.
Right.
We enjoy listening and watching a lot of things. So we come to the table with a lot of kind of like cultural knowledge of genre and style and stuff like that. And we're just fans of a lot of things. So we often make references to that in our music, and a lot of the times just to ourselves as we're writing music.
Do you think that's part of why you guys were the right fit for Weird? Because that's kind of Weird Al's thing too, right? He's like a chameleon and he does all these things. Like I know you have like hard rock tracks on there, and you have more kind of like Thomas Newman-esque stuff in that score. So it's very eclectic.
Yeah, I think the thing with Weird is like, it's not a parody. It's kind of this like alternate reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very important to the director, Eric Appel, and to Al to play the entire thing like super authentic. Like it was like this great American bio story that you would watch in a theater in 1994, i.e. Forrest Gump or Shawshank Redemption. And so the backbone of the score is kind of very genuinely that. But then, yes, there's all these individual, like, heightened moments where we could just take our various enthusiasms and, like, lean into them. I think, like, one example would be, like, that fight that happens in the diner. We go, like, full John Wick, except with accordion in it.
What inspired you to become composers, and how did you get started?
It started for me. I remember walking out of Curse of the Black Pearl, Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie, when I was 13. And I was obsessed with pirates. And I was like, why do I love pirates so much? I can't stop thinking about pirates. I made a little like GeoCities website about pirates. And then I realized it was because I was obsessed with the music. Mm-hmm. And I think that the music manipulated me. I realized it manipulated me into feeling this way. And I thought that was amazing.
My origin story, I was like a band geek. I played the saxophone and clarinet and flute and did a lot of musical theater. Good old choir boy. And somewhere along the line in high school, probably after I saw Lord of the Rings, I realized it was way more fun to boss everyone else around and tell them what to play rather than practice all my instruments and perform them myself. So then I was like, maybe I should do that in college. I went to NYU, studied music composition. It was like this crazy contemporary composition program that was like not quite what I expected. But there's a big film school at NYU. My roommate, who's like one of my best friends to this day, was in the film school. So, week 2 of college, I just was like scoring the movie he made for his first week of class. And yeah, moved here, started apprenticing for Chris, met Zach. Rest is history.
I think you guys both studied composition at university, right? Was it worth it?
I think yes.
Right.
For sure.
I agree.
Because I think maybe I'm old school in this regard, but I think there is like a real value in kind of having like an academic structure in which you will both be taught and also teach yourself in the confines of the structure. And because if you just kind of go off on your own, you almost like don't know what you don't know. And then you don't know necessarily what you should know. And I think just the act of going to class, and more importantly than class, like private lessons with your composition teacher or any instrumental teacher. Or I had a crazy experience in college where I like studied abroad in Italy, and I had this insane Italian professor named Riccardo Riccardi, who's like this super contemporary classical composer in Rome. And like, he assigned me the most insane freaking homework every week. Like this, here's an example of what he would tell me to do. We'd sit down in the hour composition lesson and he'd pull out like a Mozart piano sonata and talk for 15 minutes about like Mozart style orchestration, and then plop the sonata in front of me and say, okay, orchestrate this whole movement by the next lesson in the style of Mozart. And we're going to go through it bar by bar. And you're going to tell me why you made each choice, like what you picked the things from. And that is a lot different than listening to a bunch of Mozart and trying to like copywriting it, like having to justify your work in an academic setting. It's funny. I was talking with my assistant this morning about kind of how amazing I think it is right now, like how much you can learn on the internet. And like Zach and I just finished a project that we did a lot of learning in terms of like synth programming and stuff in an area that we hadn't really explored before. And I was talking with my assistant about this, but a lot of the stuff I learned from exercises like that in college, I wouldn't have been able to do if I was just kind of like on my own finding YouTube videos or, you know, checking out books from the library. I sort of think you need a structure. It's almost like scaffolding to like become the best version of yourself. Some of it's what you learn in the classroom, but a lot of it is sort of prompting you to teach yourself and figure out how to teach yourself. And I feel like if you've like really, you know, gotten the best out of a university education, at the end of it, you feel like empowered to teach yourself when you don't know how to do something and approach it in a way that you'll get the most out of it.
I would just add that also on top of all of that, like I think it's just really important to have a foundational knowledge of music and music theory. And I think that just helps you in general, and being, I'm all about just being exposed to things that you wouldn't be exposed to. And like, whether it's a composition teacher who just like forces you to sit through like a Cage concert or like as an Atlas concert or whatever, like that's really important. And you just kind of need that.
Is music theory still useful for a film composer?
I think so also.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like 100%. I mean, like, look, the more theory you know, just the minute that you feel bored by something you're working on, like pull a different tool out of the box kind of thing. Like,
you're going to be a film composer. I'm not going to say a successful one. I'm going to say one who does a lot of different things. Then you need to know how to create those and how to make them. And music theory is like, again, like a foundational element to that, in my opinion.
We do as film composers, like we basically spend all day solving dramatic problems from the perspective of like a filmmaker, and they might throw you a curveball, and the more you know how to manipulate musical sounds, the better chance you have of like solving their problem. And so then when a director says, nah, I don't really like how that's working with that, I need it to be more purple, you know that purple actually means maybe the way those clarinets moved in that Mozart sonata that you orchestrated for your composition teacher in Italy in 2008, and like that might solve it.
So what is the collaborative process like when you guys are working together?
Have you seen that KY wrestling scene in Old School? That's basically it.
I just watched. Did you just watch that on Netflix?
No.
I just watched it.
You guys are insane.
Great scene.
All right. All right.
So that pretty much explains our collaborative process. We are extremely in sync.
There you go. All right.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that's our process. We lube up and get in the ring and wrestle.
Is that not how you would describe
true.
it, Zach? No,
That's very, yeah, it's 100%. And if I was going to really like emphasize a point or like clarify anything. So once we're in there, it's like we're really very much on the same page a lot of the time in terms of like our vision for a project or for a cue, and we really work off each other's enthusiasm. And someone comes to the table and says, I have an idea for this scene, like let me take a stab at it. We just kind of like really like get excited about certain scenes in projects, and then we kind of start there, and then we kind of regroup at the end of the day or something like that. We're constantly on FaceTime, like together,
like all day, every day.
We have a lot of the same like file structure, like so it's really easy to like send stuff back and forth, and it's very, I mean, we've been doing it for years, so like it's pretty easy at this point. A lot of trust, obviously.
So you're both in Cubase?
Yeah.
So are you sending sessions even back and forth, or are you going to keep those?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And
we have slightly different templates, but not like, but it's very easy to just like open something up and get it working, or import all the tracks.
Will you like open something up and just like hack it up? Like, hey, here's a sketch.
Yeah,
and
sometimes.
Like, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And we use also Ableton Live a lot. Like we rewire it into Cubase, which is kind of this like, we're on borrowed time because we can't update Ableton, we can't update Cubase because Rewire is no longer supported. So, and it's like a significant part of our workflow. We do a lot of audio editing and like loop stuff in Ableton. And we've tried making the switch to Cubase, like editing audio and editing, and we just cannot do it. We cannot.
It's awful. It's
so
awful.
we have to.
If anyone at Steinberg is listening, they need to buy Ableton, or they need to play nice with them.
How do you go about scoring fight scenes and other hype moments?
Okay, I feel like we approach fight scenes in a unique way where we're all about like how jacked up do we get when we're scoring the fight scene. Like if we are not getting jacked up, like if we're not getting pumped it from a Cobra Kai fight scene, then we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We kind of pick maybe like a style or some type of like thematic groove, and maybe like one fight is going to be like a more guitar driven fight. One fight's going to be an orchestra with guitar in the background. Maybe one fight's going to be just orchestra. But when you're doing your own action scenes, it can be really, easy to kind of just say like, I'm going to pull up like an ensemble action strike patch and just like do the drum stuff, that's cool. And like, that will cover a lot of ground, but really finding a personality for each fight, I think is like the best thing that you could do. And whether that personality is like an instrument or a specific groove or a combo of instruments. For me personally, my favorite fights in Cobra Kai are the ones that sound like Street Fighter soundtracks. Like
I was about to say that.
Yeah. Like
there's a lot of like video game influence and anime influence, just because like the situation is so ridiculous in Cobra Kai that the only way to do it and like get everyone to buy into it is to just go as hard as you can. Right. And totally. Zach, I cut you off.
No, that's exactly it. So I think like when you're watching like an action scene you're writing, and if you're not getting like chills, then I feel like you've got to maybe find something that like makes it pop a little bit. And they're honestly, I think action scenes are not as intimidating as one might think, because I think you're actually, once you're like settling into a groove or something, it flies by.
Because a lot of them are like karate tournament fights or tournament style fights, the fights are broken up into individual points, and it kind of gives it a structure that sometimes when you first sit down to work on the scene can be like a real pain in the ass. But once you kind of figure out how you're going to design whatever your concept for the fight is with the point structure, you often get a very satisfying kind of like build and conclusion.
Do you have any kind of process for like you zoom out on the scene, and do you kind of like curve the like, okay, I'm going to be sad over here and we're going to start building here?
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
For sure.
Totally.
So this one might be a little harder to answer, but how do you make connections and work your way up in the film industry?
Honestly, like number one thing is you got to just like be enthusiastic, because if you like put good energy out there, I know this sounds kind of woo woo, but like that's the thing that everyone remembers. So if you're enthusiastic and you like, when you meet people, that's a huge step up automatically. People will want to work with you. I think as for like how to meet people, I often tell aspiring composers, like it's much more important to go hang out with your filmmaker writer friends or friends who are interested in that than it is to hang out with like composers or look to connect with other composers, because they have different needs and they open up different opportunities, and the ones that filmmakers open up are significantly better for your career. If you want to do film music, think of yourself as a filmmaker. Your pencil just happens to be music, and go hang out with filmmakers and talk to them about movies and talk to them about story, because like that's way more interesting than like hanging out with a bunch of music nerds and talking about orchestration, which maybe you'll get you an orchestration gig, but it might not get you a film composing gig.
We get sent reels all the time, and I feel like something I always like when I'm listening to one or whatever, like I want to hear something different. And I think the best thing that you could do is present your music in a way that just people will remember it. For composers who are looking to hire assistants or additional writers or tech assistants or whatever, just they want to hear that you're bringing something kind of interesting to the table. So I think that that's like whether it's on your website or on a reel or whatever, putting music that I think is not like what you would necessarily hear when someone presses play on like all the other websites.
All right, last question. Favorite Weird Al song?
Windows 95 Sucks is mine.
Right.
I have a very specific memory of like, I grew up and like my best friend's dad was like an OG Apple fanboy. So like they had all Mac computers.
Right.
And as a result, like when it was time for my family to get a computer, which is an insane thing to say at this point,
right.
First we got a Mac clone and then we got a real Mac. And so like I had beaten in from my friend's dad from like early age that like Windows sucks. It's all about Mac.
Right.
And then Weird Al had this song, Windows 95 Sucks. And I just thought it was hysterical. And I would listen to it over and over and over and over.
My favorite is That's Your Horoscope for Today off Running with Scissors.
Nice. Yeah. All right.
Running with Scissors is my favorite album. I feel like every gen has their own Weird Al album that they connect with.
Sure.
And that one was like 1999 or 2000 or 98 maybe. But I love that one.
Is the Star Wars one on that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I remember when that music video dropped. It was like literally like global news.
Yes.
I have a can of Spam signed by his whole band. I'm serious.
Wow,
I'm there.
amazing.
Yeah. So that's awesome. You guys did this. Yeah.
He's amazing. He's like
He's so awesome.
Nice person, cool person, like just awesome. It's crazy that we're on an album with him. I think.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's literally insane.
Right. Was he involved in your process at all, or was it more with the director?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was pretty involved.
Yeah, he was involved. It was funny because he was on tour at the time, and like, so we would like go over to the cutting room for meetings, and Al would be like on Zoom, and then he would just be like, "Oh, guys, I gotta go play the show," and he'd just like bounce, and then 2 hours later he would just join again after he played a concert.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. That was fun. Thanks for the music. You guys are doing.
Of course.
You guys are killing it right now, huh? So, how about Florida Man? That just came out, right?
The album kicks ass. Seriously, listen to the album.
All right.
Like, yeah,
listen to the album. Very different than what we normally do. Kind of like weird psychedelic swamp jazz. There's an 11-minute track on there. It's like a very bizarro album that Netflix somehow let us release.
Nice.
So we're very excited
it's like not quite what's in the show. Like all the same materials there, but it's really like an album.
Nice.
And so I highly recommend it.
Okay. Well, everybody check out the album. All right.
Sweet.
Zach and Leo, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Ryan.
Bye.
Bye.